PCB editor is based on the physical board, its stackup, its cross-section. Constraint Manager is designed to apply constraints to this physical stackup. For both physical and spacing constraints, constraints are applied by layer using constraint sets or CSets. If we open up and expand the default physical CSet, we'll see that the constraints have been applied by layer. Capture, on the other hand, as a schematic environment, doesn't deal with the physical board or its stackup or its layers, and doesn't know about these things, but we'd like to apply constraints so that they'll reflect what your actual board is like. You can do this on the Capture desktop using the Constraint Window. Constraint Window understands your physical and spacing worksheet, the physical board, the stackup, the cross-section, and you can apply from within Capture your own constraints by layer. In this movie, we'll see how to set up, use, and apply constraints by layer for physical and spacing using constraint sets and CSets right from your Capture desktop. First step is to bring the stackup and layer information from Constraint Manager into the Constraint Window by doing a BackAnnotate of the BRD file. You don't need a Cadence license for PCB Editor in order to BackAnnotate from the BRD to your Capture desktop. So I'm going to go into Tools in Capture, BackAnnotate. I'm going to go to the PCB Editor BackAnnotate. I have my BRD file in my Allegro subdirectory, and I'll just say OK. And the BackAnnotate process will bring both the netlist information from the BRD, but also the Constraint Manager information into Constraint Window automatically. So we'll say yes, we want to import the constraints from Constraint Manager. And now we can see that we have the default CSet now available to us and visible in the Constraint Window. If I mouse over and open up the default CSet, I can see a cross-section of the stackup, and I can see the values applied by layer from Constraint Manager available to us now on the Capture desktop in the Constraint Window. These will all be inherited by your nets when you netlist forward, unless you put your own constraints in, because they're part of the default CSet for physical. If we go to the Spacing tab, we'll see the default spacing CSet displayed. If we put in a value, for instance, in properties for a particular net and line width, that value will apply to all layers in Constraint Manager. But if we want to do a controlled impedance board, we might want different width values for different layers. And to do that, we have to apply a physical constraint set, a CSet. Let's select some nets. I'm going to go ahead and select Physical CSet. The only physical CSet we see displayed right now is the default CSet, but those aren't the values that I want. If I'd like to see the current values displayed for the minimum line width in the CSet, I can see it from the screen. I'll scroll over to minimum line width. I'll right mouse click and hit Display Layers. I can see a cross-sectional view now of what the constraint widths are by layer. And these aren't really the ones I want. What I really need to do is to make my own physical CSet with different widths by layer. So let's do that. I'll go ahead and select Define Physical. And this will open up the Physical CSet window. And I can see the default CSet displayed as a cross-section. And I can collapse that and expand that. And I'm going to create a new physical CSet. And I'll call that my widths. And to make it simple, I'll get my initial values from the default, because I don't want to change anything else in this particular example except the minimum line width by layer, and that's what I'll do. So I'll collapse this, and there's now my widths CSet, and the same values as the default. To change the values for the my widths custom CSet that we're making, and just for the minimum line width, I'll put my mouse in the label header for that constraint and right mouse. In this example, I just want to change the minimum line width for my internal layers from 3.8 to 4. So I'm going to highlight all of those. put in 4, apply to the selected layers, save that. I now have for my new CSet 4 mills for the internal layers. Now that I'm done, I'll just say exit. And in my display, I can see that we've added our new CSet to the available physical CSets. Now all I want to do is apply my new CSet to my selected nets, and I'm all set to go. So to do that, I'm just going to select that CSet. You can see it goes in here in our Apply CSet field. All my nets are selected, and I just select the button Apply New or Selected CSet to the selected nets. The new My Widths CSet has been assigned now to my selected nets, and I'll do a save. We can now see that there's my new CSet applied to my nets, and there's my new values displayed. When we net rev forward into the BRD, all this information will now be sent to Constraint Manager as part of net rev. We'll see that in the next movie.